and welcome to this week's episode of Not D&D, brought to you by EN World. We are again staying on the Sci-Fi Tabletop RPG, and we have Metis creative team here to talk to us about their game. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
How about you go around and introduce yourself? For today, we're talking about Astra Arcanum, and if you introduce yourselves and what you did, how you're involved with the game.
All right. Tyler, you start.
Why me? My name is Tyler. I'm the lead writer and editor for Metis and for Astra Arcanum. I joined Metis at the beginning in 2021 as an editor, and then have shifted into full-time, left my teaching career behind and am now a writer and editor. So yeah, that's how I got started.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarp. I am one of the co-founders of Metis Creative. I sadly handle the boring sides of things, the production and the business. And I'm happy to be here answering some creative questions, finally.
Yeah, I relate to that, Sarp, as well. I'm the same at EN Publishing. But somebody needs to make the wheels spin and get all these creatives herded into one place so they can create the game.
Absolutely.
I relate.
Yeah.
I relate. As I mentioned, we are talking about Astra Arcanum today. The Kickstarter campaign is fully funded earlier this year, so congratulations to the team. But I believe you'll be doing late pledges via Backakit, is that correct?
Late pledges will be through Kickstarter. So the same link. Yep. The same link. People can just go to the Kickstarter and late pledge if they so wish to.
Fab. So if you're listening to this and you missed the Kickstarter campaign, links on the screen or in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast, if anything's interesting when we're talking. Before we talk about the game, which is what we're here to do, obviously, I'd like to be nosy and talk about the two of you a little bit as gamers, and also how you got started kind of working in the industry. I mean, Tyler, you briefly mentioned that, but I'll ask you the first classic question I ask everyone, which is, do you remember the first tabletop role-playing game that you ever played, your first experience? And Tyler, I'll tag you in first.
Yeah, it's not a very grand or romantic one, but I'm 42, so I'm, a dinosaur, but I didn't start playing role-playing games until quite late. I started in 2014 after I'd already moved to Turkey. For whatever reason, it's right up my alley, but I never found it when I was younger. I was always doing sports or rock climbing or something, and didn't have a group of friends that did it that I knew of. Later, I found out some of them were playing with different friend groups, and it passed me by. But I was really into, nerdy stuff, Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, and other stuff. So I would have, once I found it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is this sort of thing. These role-playing games are for me. I started playing. My first game was a D&D game. One of my friends, the friend who got me into role-playing games, D&D specifically, was running it. And he was running it, I don't know. I mean, he is a really great improviser. So he tried to just do an improvised campaign that didn't go so well because nothing was planned. So we were always just fighting the same hobgoblins over and over. Sure. And I had some joke character named Ashless Chaps, something like
amazing,
like a rogue trickster, arcane trickster. It was not very grand, but then I just started gobbling up all different systems, and from D&D immediately started DMing, and I've been a forever GM ever since, and just trying to expose myself to all kinds of games out there, and not just stick to D&D and fantasy. So and then I was a teacher, and then I started for a brief time I was running a company where I was teaching English through role-playing games, and that's kind of partly how I got on the radar of Metis, because I was editing in my free time and doing that in my free time, and then met up with them and got started with them as an editor. So, and then that's kind of how I got into it.
And escalated to where you are now. There we go.
Indeed, yeah.
That shows how the hobby can really bite you and get you involved. You start just playing it as a hobby, and then suddenly it's your full-time job. So,
Yeah, I fell hard in love with it, for sure. It just changed my life, for positive.
Amazing. Sarp, I'll ask you the same question. What was your first tabletop role-playing game?
In direct contrast to Tyler, I could be considered a baby in the confines of the people in the hobby. I'm just 25, and this is with great shame that the first role-playing game I ever played was actually Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So that's actually right up in my first year in university and whatnot. like some guy was essentially walking around like the school campus asking if anybody's interested in playing any like Dungeons and Dragons or essentially role-playing games. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Just as Tyler was, I was a diehard nerd, the books, the games, Magic Gathering, the whole package. And Dungeons and Dragons seemed right up my alley. And it was so I fell hard and fast, as people in our sphere does. And from there, I essentially started reading all sorts of like very interesting and kind of niche role-playing games. I remember a game called Hillfolk, for instance, from Peregrine Press, if I'm correct. I tried to essentially do homebrews of my favorite video games into role-playing games, just play around with my friends, without even the notch that actually those products already existed. And then after a while, it wasn't that long, after maybe 6 months, 1 year into hobby, I realized that Kickstarter was essentially a place to pick up and fund role-playing games. And I had this weird and extremely niche idea of having a Dungeons and Dragons campaign set in history, and specifically like Istanbul, like this, Victorian era, a bit like Eastern type of setting to exist. And it worked significantly better than I ever imagined, I ever intended also. So we came up with this brand, Historic Arcanum, which essentially boils down to Assassin's Creed meets Dungeons and Dragons, essentially adventuring in a very like this universe that takes place in our world, but obviously in this like mythologized and mythicized version of it. And that's where the Metis creative adventure started. And here we are, it's been 5 years, and we finally have our own system too.
Fantastic. Well, that segues us really nicely to talk about the game we're here to talk about, so Astra Arcanum. So we're talking about different sci-fi tabletop RPGs this month, and this feels really different, really fresh. So I wanted to get you on to talk about it. So Tyler, if someone's not heard about the game before, if they missed the crowdfunder, could you give us an intro into what this game is?
Yeah, so Astra Arcanum is a sci-fi dark fantasy that takes place in a sort of alternate or imagined version of our history, of our future rather, kind of loosely in the same universe as our other books, Historic Arcanum, but what could happen in the future. Earth has been abandoned for various mysterious reasons, and we're now trying to make our way in the solar system, in the solar reach, with Mars as kind of the center of things, and other factions either working together or vying to compete with each other. If I was going to give like a very briefest elevator pitch, probably should have started with that rather than the bloviating. But it's kind of like the gritty, realistic sci-fi, something like The Expanse meets like dark magic, like with a magical system that's punishing and not for the faint of heart.
Wow. Love that. And so what was it that made you want to pivot to looking to the future, to sci-fi? Because as you mentioned before, you've been looking at, historical kind of twists on things. What made you want to jet forward in space?
We are full-blown nerds. So history was one leg of it, and sci-fi was the second leg. So it was a natural expansion to what we wanted to do. And most importantly, when we were writing for Historic Arcanum, and we really want to write good fiction in addition to our settings and our rule sets, we were a bit constrained by the constraints of history. So future was like essentially 200-300 years into the future was something that we could be a bit more free with what we wrote. And again, that was a natural expansion to Historic Arcanum as a universe to explore.
Yeah. I mean, the world of the game isn't, like you say, dark is the correct word. It's not a happy place. It's very moody, dark, and scary, and not necessarily very hopeful. Could you tell us a little bit more information about the setting and the lore?
Would you like to take that, Tyler?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it's a couple generations after a pretty cataclysmic event on Earth, and then a cataclysmic war for control of what's left of humanity in our solar system. So it's things are kind of peaceful, and there's a bit of a détente but simmering tension still, without going too much into detail. But it's a place where terraforming is still, it is happening on Mars, but then it got disrupted by the war for control over the solar system. So it's kind of restarting, and it's not a great place to be. Like, Mars is pretty inhospitable, and you've got to make it work. So, and we've tried to, take a realistic approach to that. And then also what's going on in the moons around Saturn and around Jupiter and the asteroid belt. And that's kind of where we're, at least for now, like where we're confined. We're kind of keeping it central to those areas and what's going on there. But there's, the nice thing about the solar system is there's a lot of mysterious stuff out there that can always be filled in later, or filled in by the community too. So so yeah, it is dark. We do have some nice, beautiful looking things like these solar sails that use the the radiation of the sun to travel at faster speeds, not FTL, but faster than like a normal junker. But even so, like, it's pretty clunky, gritty, realistic looking spacecraft and void craft and things like that, and people just trying to make their lives continue, keep going.
One interesting thing about this is that, like, the setting is dark, but it's not grim dark, in the sense that
True, yeah.
There is still hope. There is still people who value the unity of humanity, and the debate is not if everything sucks. The debate is about how are we going to shape the future of humanity, if you're going to be united, if you're going to be federated, if you're going to be divided political entities, if you're going to try to terraform Mars to be Earth 2.0, or if you're going to embrace the void, or if you're going to somehow return back to the Earth. So there are paths ahead, each with their own, costs, but those are still paths forward compared to a grim dark universe where everything is horrible and we will exist forever in misery. So this is not that. This is more of a tough time for humanity trying to find itself after losing its homeworld.
So there's still something left to fight for, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Speaking
well,
of
it depends on who you talk to, I guess, in the universe. There's some, but yeah, no, totally, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to use that as a little segue to talk about the combat in the game, because the combat was really interesting. Because you have I really like the targeted damage system that you got in place, and it's designed to be very tactical. So let's dive into the mechanics a bit. First of all, perhaps if we give an overview of the core D20 dice pool mechanics. So Tyler, could you talk us through how that works?
Yeah, sure. So one really interesting thing that Sarp and our other co-founder Doa came up with is this, that there's only one die that you need to roll in the game, and it's a D20. So instead of fumbling around for different damage dice, you just roll a D20, and then sometimes it's like you said, a dice pool, so multiple D20s depending on how long you have to do something, or if it's like a spray of gunfire rather than one precise sniper shot type thing, you might be rolling, several D20s. But then the damage is allocated based on whatever the profile of your weapon is. So you're not going to be doing like rolling 4 D20s and then shuffling over to roll like 30 D6s. You're going to roll those D20s and then move to however many hits you're doing, and how many types of hits you're doing, whether those are the serious systemic ones you alluded to with our targeted system, or the minor wounds, which we're calling stress. So there's like kind of two damages you can take. Stress, which is like representing cuts and wounds and psychological toll of war, which builds up and can cause things to happen. And then also just the damage that goes through your armor and starts doing serious things to your body. Yeah,
lovely. What a lovely description. I mean, I love on the character sheet. People watching the stream will be able to see it, and if you're listening in the show notes, if you download the Quickstarter guide, you'll be able to see what we're talking about if you're listening to the podcast. But the character sheet 2 has all these different like areas that you can be affected. Is that related to the targeted damage system? So
Yep,
I guess
exactly.
Yeah.
So what happens is, let's say that I have I don't know, like a shotgun, right? And the shotgun has a couple of profiles of attacking long range, short range, and in each profile, you either roll above the miss, so that is the first one, which is like a minor hit, which does just stress damage, minor wounds if people are watching the current screen, or if you roll something above precise or a crit, it does systemic damage. So let's say a shotgun does a cardiovascular damage, essentially like a bleed type of wound. And if the target doesn't have any armor slots left, it just goes directly, starts bleeding the character. The reason why we designed the combat this way is, I mean, one, I really like Fallout and the VAT system there.
Sure, yeah.
And to essentially make this combat more than just knocking off hit points, but to actually, simulate a like very lethal tactical combat. So if you have someone who's like severely armed, a knife to the like in between the plates could be just as well deadly, or just to simulate the choking in the void by cutting someone's oxygen supply off, frying electronics off a like a drone, cutting off limbs, hacking away legs, all the fun bits.
Yeah, as soon as you mentioned Fallout, actually, I see that kind of inspiration about VATS as
Yeah.
well. So that makes perfect sense with it coming through. I mean, you mentioned that combat, and this, obviously, the targeted damage system supports a deep tactical and deadly kind of combat system. What other things are there in the game that can help game masters run their combats that way using the system?
One of the biggest challenges in creating such a, I would say, detailed combat is that this would have gotten extremely, crunchy very fast. So that's why we decided to just use one type of die and just a handful of dice roll to resolve everything. The combat system for the bestiary entries, NPCs, will be significantly streamlined. Players play with action points. Bestiary entries will have just a couple of actions that they can take per round. So just like one movement, one type of a attack, or like two, and you get to choose in between, and one passive, stuff like that. So it is easier to keep track of for the dungeon masters, for the game masters. This is not DnD. And we are also working on creating some sort of like a horde mechanic to simulate combat with, if this was Dungeons and Dragons, simulate combat of like 10 goblins in one turn. To make it significantly more streamlined. So our goal essentially is to create a system where you can play it very tactical without, making the combat into a slog.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And if I could add something to that too, one thing, we're still, developing this and working on it with our own interior playtesting, and then when it gets to public playtesting, it'll be retooled even more. But one thing that also we're pretty excited about is the way that we're doing combat. Like the flow of combat is more kind of up to the players and the GM as a negotiation rather than like a strict like initiative roll. So like some of the reaction points could be reactions they do on other people's turns, or you can kind of decide what's, for lack of a better term, like stance you want to take in combat. Do you want to be more aggressive and push forward, or do you want to hang back? And that can give you different bonuses or banes within the combat system. So it kind of right from the get-go, when you jump into combat, which could maybe when somebody first reads this seem kind of forbidding and clunky, it's pretty intuitive and you can get moving pretty quick. And then people have to pay attention because they might want to do something, not just waiting for their turn to show up, but they might want to do something to support their friend, or take advantage of the movement of one of the NPCs or enemies or whatever.
Yeah.
So, sorry. So a couple more fun additions to this conversation. One of the most fun things that we had with Astra Arcanum's combat system was essentially the initiative system, where instead of rolling, we decided that we're going to give players the option to pick, as Tyler was saying, their stances. If they want to go first, they're going to let go of a lot of their action points, and they're going to be fast, but will be able to do, much less with their turn, whereas they can prefer to go last, and they would get a boost to their action points. So even starting off the combat is easier. You just declare if you're gonna be very fast, neutral, or slow, and get your bonuses. And the game master can just slot in NPCs in between those turns. It will be written on their best tier cards anyway. So again, a part of combat that takes a long time will be streamlined, but in a tactical way. Another addition that we had was the stress mechanic, which we really like, and were heavily inspired by the video game Darkest Dungeon. So if you fill up your stress bar with bruises, cuts, actual fear, again, like minor things that are not necessarily, again, systemic wounds, but minor wounds or exhaustion and whatnot, enemies most likely, unless they're like a hero, like a legendary bestiary entry, they just flee. And we left that part of that we essentially wanted to add something that wasn't mechanically there in previous role-playing games that we tested out. Whereas players, when creating their own characters, they pick up a psychological profile. So again, akin to Darkest Dungeon, they roll to see if they give into the panic and receive their specific type of bane, or if they overcome their stress level, be very good, focused under heavy strain of stress, and be essentially better fighters of themselves.
Yeah. What we're trying to do there is, like if you have a lot of heavy armor and you're just taking a bunch of like minor hits, it just seemed a bit, as we were working on it and playtesting it within ourselves, a bit unfun to, die or go incapacitated from 30 minor wounds. So we came up with this interesting way of how would you deal with that moment in combat where you're taking a lot of hits but nothing's getting through, almost like being a tank gunner in World War II. You're in a metal box, but you're going deaf and you're going crazy. So stress builds up, and if you don't deal with it, it can cause some problems. And based on that psychological profile that Sart mentioned, you make like a stress overload check, and either something, if you pass it, maybe some crazy stress boon happens to you, or you thrive under pressure, or some catastrophic thing happens. And then some of our, without jumping too far to another topic and again bloviating too much, some of our archetypes are subclasses, which are called archetypes in our game, thrive on stress and building up stress, and then doing something cool with them.
That sounds really cool. I mean, well, let's segue into talking about characters and character creation, actually, because we've been kind of dancing in how that interacts with the combat. So, Sarp, how about you give us an overview of who we're playing in this game? Who are we going to be?
All right. So, unless you really want a special character, you're going to be playing an armiger. In the universe of Astra Arcanum, like the polities have moved beyond traditional militaries and armed forces because of logistical, political, and military reasons, and they are now heavily reliant on this small, 3 to 10 man bands called an armiger bands, and you are playing as an armiger, unless if you're a very special character that wants to be not that. These folks come from a vast variety of backgrounds, whether they were hive city dwellers in Mars, if they were essentially like this frontier lawman and Sarah's and like this asteroid belt and whatnot, and you build your character essentially around this idea of a solar system bounty hunter / enforcer. And through there, we have a couple of really fun classes that essentially covers the basis of role-playing games and like sci-fi fantasy. Bastions, essentially, or tanks or like fighters, like these guys are really adept at handling close quarters warfare. You have your specters, essentially your rogues. You have your maguses, your mages who are either using psionics, which is more which is more acceptable by the society, or your essentially eldritch casters who are extremely frowned upon and secretive. You have your vitalists, which sound a bit like medics/clerics, but they go far beyond. They're essentially people who are very adept at using human and xenobiology. And you have synths, which are the archetypical hackers, but again, once again, they go beyond with our archetypes. What we wanted to do was essentially classes being very base additions to your character, and your archetypes being the most definitive one. And we have a couple of really fun ones. Like, for instance, at the top of my mind, Whitelist has the Grafter, which starts with a pet homunculi, and you essentially extract the DNA throughout the game and graft, limbs and I like vocal cords, or chitinous armor and whatnot to your homunculi to essentially act as your pets. Or you have the Lernian operative in a Bastion, where you're essentially Bane from Batman, injecting various chemicals to your body, either to make yourself grant yourself super speed, super strength, or durability and whatnot, and try to essentially not OD on all the chemicals that you inject into your body. We release like a devlog with new archetypes bi-weekly, I guess, on our Kickstarter. So if you guys want to find out more about wacky subclasses that we are designing for Astra Arcanum, you can do that on the Kickstarter page. Tyler, do you have any other additions to this role I gave?
So also part of when you're creating your character, you're going to choose your class and then your archetype, and then you can later, there are multi-class options and possibilities later, of course. But then, much like many games, so it's not totally like a new thing. It's going to be easy to jump into. We have core skills that you'll pick, and you'll pick your background and your psychological profile, like how you deal with stress. And that's part of the character creation thing too.
Yeah.
And then as you gain, we don't call them levels or XP, but you gain threat levels. Like the more notorious you get in the Solar Reach, the more cool options you'll get in abilities. And we're going to have basically like a constellation type star map that you can choose, sort of akin to the thing that always pops in my mind when I'm explaining this to non-RPG people is who play video games, is like the Skyrim skill trees, something where you can kind of pick and choose and make your character, uniquely your own, and decide how you want to play this person.
So getting XP is more like gaining breadth and new skills, opposed to just leveling up in power and things.
Yeah. Not only that, but we're going to have a printable star chart right at the other side of your character sheet. And the idea is, when you make a new build, when you make a unique character, they're going to have a very specific constellation for them, because everybody will have this shared star map and start off at the right center of it. But then you're going to be building towards other sides of the chart. If I'm playing this, brutish Hulk tank Bastion type, I'd probably pick something like defense and melee as my as my progression trees, and I'd have a very specific looking constellation for myself. Or if I'm playing this Spectre Saboteur kind of thing, I'd probably go with ranged and stealth, and I'd have this very special unique looking constellation for myself, all from a shared, essentially a level up star chart.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like character creation has a load of options in it, and you've got the chance to customize things and make really unique, interesting characters in it. How long would character creation take? Is this something where you'd sit aside session 0 and sit and create it, or in playtesting, how long is it taking people?
Yeah, I would say that this needs a session 0. It's not as long as a traditional DnD session 0, but I would say really planning out the character would probably take 1 hour-ish, I'd say.
Maybe less. It depends. Like, it could be done faster, but yeah, maybe the first one to get like your head around the rules and stuff. Yeah. I think also just a session 0 is always great because, especially if you do it like with the rest of the people you're playing with, because you can see what everyone's expectations are, what everyone else is going to play, and if you are going to do an oops all bards, but there are no bards in this, but oops all bastions type thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, it's been like when we've been doing it quickly in the office, it's been shorter than an hour. But yeah, like I think if you're going to be jumping in first time, it might be a little bit lengthier.
We've not we've spoken a little bit about the flavor of it, like of magic and spells in the universe. But Tyler, could you talk us through how it works, like what magic looks like in terms of gameplay and in the universe?
Yeah, so we have two types of magic users. One are scions, and then like within the scions, there are kind of two schools, and then magi or work in progress name, because one of those is a theurgist, which is a kind of a cleric type, someone who believes that they're getting their magic from a divine source, and then occultists who are studying spells and finding grimoires around the solar reach. So just going through them very briefly, the scions are more sanctioned and controlled, unless you find your way to be unlicensed in various ways. But scions are, you'd be able to unlocking the potential of the human mind to do magic, and they have their own sets of spells. And basically, from the beginning, you have, at least as it's written now, we might change things in playtesting with more playtesting, but we don't have something like the level system of spells that other games, like for example D&D, have. Like you have the ability to do a bunch of different types of spells, some definitely more powerful than others. And the way that works is you roll the difficulty for how you're, much like shooting one of the weapons, like how successful it's going to be. Are you going to succeed, fail, miscast it, or overcast and do something extra? Because again, magic is something in our universe that is messing with the rules of reality, so reality might bite you back. But yeah, scions are more mentally focused, mentally damaging spells to mess with your opponent's minds and their perceptions. The theurgists and the occultists are using hidden knowledge, and again, trying not to spoil too much or go on too long for hours and hours, but use in our word, grimoires isn't just like dusty old tomes. It could be an old data, like a black box from an old spaceship or something, or it might be an old hard drive or something, or some data logs from another old scientist from the Candor Glade and a group of nerdy scientists in Mars. So they use more like what we would call a warlock or wizard type magical. But again, it's done through rituals and something that you have to pass in order to get it done. You can't just do a cantrip and be fine. You have to put some energy into it and then pass the test. And and with those guys, if you continue building it up as the rounds go by, it can be even more destructive. But if you fail the roll, then it could be a bigger ass biting, basically.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Sarp, that I might have missed?
No, that's pretty much it. The idea, and essentially we are carrying this over historical Arcanum universes. Magic is extremely dangerous, so unless you know exactly what you're doing, you're probably going to burn yourself.
Yeah, and even if you do know what you're doing, like
you may still burn yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I like that little bit of risk with it. I mean, being a sci-fi setting, there's also really fun equipment and augmentations and things like that. So, Sarp, I don't know if there's any particular favorites you have that you want to talk us through in equipment and augmentations in the game.
No specific favorites yet, but essentially we wanted for players to be able to replace lost limbs, because they're going to be losing all the limbs. Be able to essentially like modify your game as if this was like a cyberpunk setting. And on top of that, like every piece of like weaponry is modifiable, so you may find like a rifle that you really like, but you want to use it at a longer range. You may slap on a a sniper scope on it to get the tag to be able to fire it on a longer range. You like a blade, but you're really going to go up against all of like robots and security drones. You might be just slap like a electricity adder to it, make it into like an EMP blade. If you want to play that Wolverine fantasy, you may essentially add to your body like retractable claws and whatnot. So we're essentially writing all of those to create your sci-fi character to your heart's content.
Yeah, there's going to be like a full suite of cybernetics and armor mods and weapons and weapon mods and various items, and a lot of goodies.
Nice. I mean, for those that are watching the live stream opposed to listening to the podcast, I've been scrolling through a lot of the artwork and the imagery from the game, which is absolutely beautiful and stunning to look at. I note that you have a policy of using no generative AI. So you're working with artists. So what was the vision with the art direction for the game and the choices you've made with the style of it?
This is definitely my co-founder's question, but I'll try to make him proud. Mm-hmm. So at Metis Creative, I would say we have a short but proud history of working with extremely talented artists. We have done so since day one of the company. And we prefer to, if we are able to, work in-house with the artists, because we want them involved in the creative process as much as the writers do, and live and breathe in the same environment to create a unified vision. And with Astra Arcanum, we wanted to go down specifically this route of creating like very stylistic scenery that is very evocative of this dark but low-key hopeful sci-fi solar reach that we wanted to create. The tech is a mixture of, I would say, NASA punk and retrofuturism. So you're going to see solar sails, which is, as I said, like very retrofuturistic, combined with this very like sharp lines that you would find in a NASA Mars rover or whatnot. And the pieces are just like phenomenal. I couldn't be more proud with the art team that we're working on.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the game with us. Have you mentioned the game is still in development at the moment? There are late pledges available on the Kickstarter page, but what's the kind of a project and plan and timeline set up for the game?
So we are almost done with the core book, which houses all the rules and whatnot, and we're going to be sending out to live playtests, preferably within the next month or so. So if people want to just get an early look at Astra Arcanum and how it's going to be played, and give us some feedback, they can do so whenever they wish. And the idea is we're going to have the full, very well, beautifully laid out and illustrated book out by, I would say, Q2 next year.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
And if I can jump on that, after the next month or so, when we finish the core rule book to get it out to playtesters, we're going to be working on the Game Master's Guide.
Yeah.
To like with more details about setting and how to run an Astra campaign and all those other goodies for the forever GM to run the games.
And I would say most importantly, as we did on our previous IP Historic Arcanum, we are going to keep supporting Astra Arcanum with releases of new Game Master stuff and new campaigns, new subclasses, essentially as much as content as we can fit in that universe, because we really very passionately created this Astra Arcanum universe, and we want to essentially keep building out more stuff for it.
Yeah. Oh, I should also add with this as part of the Kickstarter and the thing that's coming when Sarp said we haven't started working on them yet, but they're going to be 3 zines, like adventure zines, short adventures rather than a sprawling campaign, shorter missions to get into as well. So that'll be coming along with the GM guide and the core rulebook.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this, like probably a year after the actual release of this video, we want to make the very core rules and the very first adventures available for free on our website. So you can get the taste of Astra Arcanum, to see if you like it.
Great. And the link for that is on the website, is on the screen, metismedia.net, or it's linked in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. So that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing Astra Arcanum with us, and congratulations on the Kickstarter success. Really excited to hear more about it as development continues. Before you leave, though, I would like to ask you one final question, which I ask everyone, which is if you have recommendations for any other tabletop games. Tyler, I'll start with you.
Can I give 2?
Go on, then. I'll allow it.
Okay. Well, you can cut me off if, depending on maybe someone else has recommended them. I mean, when I'm playing, I really like and prefer like narrative-driven, narrative-heavy RPGs. So I would wholeheartedly recommend Kids on Bikes from Hunters Entertainment. Just an amazing rule set and a fun game about. I mean, you could do many things with it, but about a group of kids or teens dealing with strange things in their town, basically. Just really fun rules and really fun, like communal world building too, like along with the GM and all the players in session 0 making the world together, which is really great. And if I'm allowed to give my second, it would be Heart, the City Beneath by Rowanwork and Deckard, which is just an amazing game, amazing system, hilarious, disturbing, terrifying, hopeful, and just really fun rules that push the narrative forward. Like as you fail, that's not the end. You just keep going, and what crazy things happen as you keep digging down into the red, wet heaven of the world beneath Spire, which is really cool. Yeah, those would be my 2.
Two good games there. Sarp, same question to you.
I think I would recommend Hillfolk, which was weirdly my second RPG after I played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Simply because it had a very streamlined and extremely fun way of playing around the social dynamics in between players, and it posed a bunch. It wasn't just one setting. It was essentially a setting generator with maybe 10, 20 ideas of role-playing scenarios within. Its namesake Hillfolk was a Bronze Age setting, which I recall, which essentially was one of the inspiration points that kicked off Metis Creative.
Fantastic. So that's 3 great recommendations there for anybody listening. Tyler, Sarp, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the game. I hope everything goes well with the development, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final product next year.
Thanks so much.
Of course. And thank you to everyone who has watched and listened. We'll be back next week with Not D&D with another sci-fi tabletop RPG to share with you. But for now, thank you and goodbye.